Hello, welcome to Exotic Gardening UK, Yorkshire Kris Weekly. On this week's episode, we'll be looking at black bamboos and seeing what their future is, because they might be flowering and potentially dying. So, black bamboos, very popular plants for the garden, and this is Phyllostachys nigra is the Latin name for it. Comes in a few forms as well. Generally we call it the black bamboo. Very hardy, you see it in most garden centres and it's grown in many people's gardens because it's hardy and it gives that exotic look to the garden, nice backdrop plant, and it has these amazing black canes, as you can see here. They don't always start off black, they can be speckly and they can be green to begin with, but then with sunlight on them they go nice and black after probably about a year or so. So it's a very nice plant to have in the garden. But late last year in 2021 I had a few comments saying that their bamboo is starting to flower, their black bamboos. And again in 2022 there's been a few more people saying they're flowering. And if you remember, when a bamboo flowers, there's a very high chance that it can die or be set back a long time. So is this the case for the black bamboo? Well, we need to know if the black bamboos that are flowering are all the same subspecies or species. So if it's all the types of Phyllostachys nigra that are flowering, then we might have a big issue. But if it's just one of the subspecies, then it might be fine to carry on growing the other subspecies. So we've got two here. This is the species Phyllostachys nigra, and we've also got a Phyllostachys nigra barrenii, and that has sort of this sort of speckly canes all the way through. It never goes fully black. I think it's the barrenii that is actually flowering at the moment and not the straight species. And there's also a shorter version of Phyllostachys nigra as well. So there's several subspecies. But if we get to the flowering stage, what you're looking for is, you're looking at the growth and you're looking high up, and what you'll see is basically like grass seeds forming, like oats. It's not like a normal flower, it is like grass seeds. And we had that, if you remember, a couple of years ago on a Phyllostachys, actually just a few meters over there. And I'll do a link to that video because that shows you what the flowers look like. And when that flowered, we thought that might be the end of that, because Phyllostachys species might only flower every 20 years, every 50 years, every 100 years. So it's not a common event, but when it does happen, it normally means everybody's Phyllostachys flowers all around the world within a year or so. It's sort of like inbuilt system where they all flower around the world, so I guess it's great for pollination. And we found with the golden bamboo that we had flowering, that mine flowered and there was other people's flowering around the world as well. But thankfully it didn't die. And I'm looking at it now and it's doing really well 2 or 3 years later. But that's not the case for every single time a bamboo flowers. Quite often the full plant puts all its energy into flowering and setting seed that it dies. And that happened with my Chusquea gigantea bamboo further down the garden as well. Luckily for that, it set loads of seeds and I've got hundreds of seedlings around that area and across the garden. But I don't have a big statuesque bamboo plant and I've got to dig up the roots of the old bamboo, which is a very tough job. So when a bamboo does flower and dies, it's a big job in the garden to actually dig it out, get rid of it, and wait many years for the seedlings to come and establish and be substantial plants as well if you want the same species. Obviously you can plant something else and you don't have to wait for your seedlings to come out, but if you want that same species, it's best to wait for the seedlings to grow up and then plant back in that area. Here with the Phyllostachys nigra bamboo, if these die, because it's such a common plant, there'd be thousands and thousands of plants that could die off and have to be dug up all across the country and all across Europe. But fingers crossed, it doesn't completely kill the plant, as in the case of the Phyllostachys, the golden bamboo that we had flowering a few years ago, which is going from strength to strength. I'll show you what that looks like now. So here we have one of the golden bamboos. This is Phyllostachys with its beautiful butter yellow canes all around me. And this, like I said, flowered a few years ago, but as you can see, It put all its energy in that flowering, and those canes died, and I cut them off, and you can see the remains down there that I've cut down to ground level almost. But these canes have all come through in the last 2 or 3 years, and we've got about a dozen or so canes that I've left here. These are all nice and healthy. We don't have the discoloration, we don't have flowering, and it's doing really, really well. What you'll notice when your bamboo does start flowering, if it does, is you'll get lots of yellowing leaves because it's putting so much energy into the flowering, and then you'll obviously notice the flowers later on. You might just see it on 1 or 2 of the canes, or you might see it on every single cane. And if you see it on every single cane, that probably means that bamboo's putting so much energy into flowering that it probably will die. So we've got to wait and see to see if our Phyllostachys nigra bamboos go that way. Will they completely burn out and flower, or will they just do a little bit of flowering and recover over a year or 2? And you can help that process to recover by feeding. So what I did with this bamboo is I cut off all the flowering canes as soon as I saw them, and then I fed. So I put loads of chicken manure, I put bloodfish and bone, and I really fed the plant for a good 6 months just to get the energy into the roots, into the rhizomes, so that it can produce more canes, and that's what it did. That's what it did. So I'm very happy to report that this, 2 or 3 years later after the flowering, it's doing well, and it doesn't look like it's going to flower again, and hopefully it won't flower, for another generation or 2. So back to the Phyllostachys nigra. So my Phyllostachys nigra in this position is south facing, it's lots of sun, so it's great for the growth. It gets well watered as well, and I do feed it, like I mentioned, with bloodfish and bone in the spring, and it's doing well. We've got lots of nice deep green leaves. I don't see any sign of discoloration really. I don't see any sort of flowers sort of being produced, and you normally see them quite high up as well. I'm looking right through the plant and I can't see any sign of flowering at this stage, which is great because we don't want to see it flowering. This, like I said, is a true species, and if we just come over here, we can see this is Phyllostachys borina, the snakeskin bamboo, and you've got some other bamboos around it as well. And if we just take a closer look, if we just zoom in there, you can see that it's looking green and lush as well. So this is, again, this has been here about 6-7 years now, but it's not producing huge canes. It's quite wispy still, the growth, but it all looks healthy. And as I look through it, I can't see any signs of flowering. So hopefully it won't flower, but like I said, we've had reports already the last sort of 6 months or so that it has been flowering in some people's gardens. So is it flowering in your garden? Have you seen signs of the plant sort of not looking as healthy? Have you seen it shooting this year? So if I look down to the base of all my bamboos, now into June, new culms are being produced. Got lots of canes just emerging at ground level. So check out for those, make sure they look healthy, and we'll keep an eye on this and we'll see if it flowers all across the country this summer, which I think it probably will. So thank you for watching this edition. We'll do updates later in the season, see if mine have flowered, and I'll be keen to hear if yours have been flowering or any other bamboos have been flowering in your garden. Thank you for watching this edition of Exotic Gardener UK. Join me next week, we'll be doing more in the garden.